Hey Monsicle, and welcome back to my channel. The second season of Bridgerton is coming up. It's gonna be out on Netflix at the end of March, and I'm really excited about it. As many other people, I love everything period, including books. And as a lesbian, I would like to see more period films and TV shows with a bit more of an upbeat and fun feel, which is why I really love Gentleman Jack. I hope the second season is not going to disappoint because it's coming out in 2022 as well. But also because of these two reasons, I'm a huge lover and reader of queer historical romances. And if you wished for Bridgerton to be a little bit more gay, this video is gonna be for you. Without further ado, let's just jump into the recommendations. There are going to be a lot of them. I'm going to try to be quick and snappy, but I can't promise anything. It's truly a big list. We're going to start with KJ Charles. I'm a huge fan of her and her work. She has a very big backlist. I'm going to recommend the books that I've read and loved from her. The first book that I'm going to go with is Sinister. The story is about Amanda and Guy. They are a brother and a sister. They live in a remote village and receive checks from their aunt. The aunt doesn't want to take them into her house because they have a reputation thanks to their parents, and she doesn't want the duo to bring shame to her household and to impede on the good marriages of her daughters. Guy and Amanda are pretty happy with the arrangement, to be quite honest. They mostly spend time with each other until Amanda finds a new hobby. She starts writing gothic fiction and even sells a novel to a publisher. The problem is she bases her main villain on Philip Rockwood, who is their neighbor and a notorious rake. Amanda, though, is a very curious creature and she wants to get to know Philip Rockwood a little bit better, maybe spy on him a little bit, because she needs inspiration for her book. So she writes to the Rockwood estate and she falls and breaks her leg in a very bad way. Philip and his friends take her in, call for the doctor. The doctor says that she can't be moved to save Amanda from being ruined because she has to stay with all these men in one house. Someone needs to stay with her, and Guy, her brother, is the one that volunteers technically. Although Guy has a lot of prejudices against Philip, and he truly believes in all the rumors that were started about Philip along the years, they still do get along, and eventually Guy realizes that a lot of things that were said about Philip are simply not true. Most of Philip's friends are queer. He truly created a family for himself with whom he discusses politics and sciences and culture. And Guy not only falls for Philip, he also is enamored with them as a collective. The romance obviously is between Philip and Guy, but Philip is also polyamorous. He is in a relationship with one of his friends, or rather two of his friends, as far as I believe. And it's a very interesting dynamic. They don't pay too much attention to it in the book, but it's definitely there. Also, the chemistry between Philip and Guy is amazing. I loved how self-assured Philip was, how he wasn't cowardly despite the time and place, and how he was very straightforward with what he wanted from Guy. This is my favorite from what I've read from KJ Charles so far. It's excellent. I highly recommend it. I also read a duology from her that had some mystery elements in it, so if you like your historical romances to be mixed with crime and a good old-fashioned mystery, check out this two. They're loosely connected to each other. You don't have to read them in order. The characters from the first book just appear in the second book. The first book in the series is Proper English. It's an FF romance. It's about a woman named Patricia who's a champion shot and who wants to establish a shooting school for ladies. She's invited to the estate of her old friend to a shooting party, and she has a complicated relationship with him because she thought that if she had to marry at some point, she would choose him because he's the only guy that doesn't repulse her. The problem is when she arrives, she gets enthralled and captivated by her friend's new fiance named Fenella. She finds her so charming and beautiful, but she can't allow herself to pursue those feelings because not only Fenella is a woman, which is half a problem, honestly, Fenella is also affianced to her best friend. A lot of people come to the shooting party. It's definitely a really big cast of characters, and at some point one of the guests gets murdered. Because of the English weather, they can't really call the authorities into the house, and they're pretty much stuck with the possible murderer. So they need to figure out the mystery on their own. The second book in the series is called Think of England, and it is a bit more intense. The protagonist is Captain Archie, who was at war and lost a few of his fingers and some of his friends to an unfortunate military accident. The guns that were shipped to them to the front line blew up in their hands. He always suspected that something was very fishy about that situation, and he doesn't believe that it was an accident. So he visits the country house of a man that could be at fault. There's also a big cast of people, and Archie specifically pays attention to a guy named Daniel da Silva, who is a Portuguese, a Jewish poet. He's a dandy, and he seems to be very out of place in the house. They really don't like each other at the start because they're very, very different people, but it turns out that they're both after the same thing. Daniel is there to investigate suspicious blackmail cases of his queer friends. So at the end, they have to band together to figure out what's actually going on. This one definitely is a bit more brutal than the first one. There are some darker themes in this one, but I really liked the dynamic between the two characters. I love Daniel. He's one of my favorite characters ever. He gives me depth and layers, and the mystery part of the story is also very, very interesting, and I was very involved in it. The last one that I want to recommend from K.J. Charles is The Gentle Art of Fortune Hunting, which is about Robin and Marian. They are a brother and a sister, and they are Locksleys, which is really fun because it's sort of a play on Robin Hood. They are swindlers. They're mostly making their money fooling people in cards, but they accumulated so much debt they needed to do something drastic, so they moved to London and they hope to find an heir and an heiress with some money under the belt who would be willing to marry them. The main romance is between Robin and Hart. Robin finds himself an heiress with a significant dowry. The heiress, though, has very protective relatives. Her uncle Hart is very suspicious of Robin, and his gut is not lying to him. He is convinced that Robin is after their money, so he starts investigating him. At some point, they end up playing a round of cards, and Robin loses a lot of money that he doesn't have to Hart. And because he's really attracted to Hart and he suspects that Hart is into men, he offers his body to pay the debt. Once again, it's a K.J. Charles book, so it has a very big cast of characters. I feel like it's something that is present in most of her books, or at least in those that I've read so far. I really enjoyed this one. Once again, the dynamic was impeccable. It was Grumpy Sunshine. It was, are we in a real relationship or is this all fake type of relationship? All K.J. Charles novels have a very cozy feel to them, and I love curling up with her books to just read them in a day or two. I'm going to also recommend you a book that is not set in England, Backwards to Oregon by Jay, my personal favorite. I love this book so much. The story is about Nora and Luke, who for a long time was pretending to be a man to serve in the military. She doesn't believe she can find a romantic partner for herself that would completely accept her. And Nora is a sex worker, and at the start of the novel, she gets jilted by a lover and left with a baby, or pregnant. Luke sort of accidentally becomes her client. The other soldiers buy Luke a woman at the brothel to have fun with, and it turns out to be Nora. It's a cool meet cute. Both Nora and Luke crave a change. They want to change their life, and Luke for some time was thinking about moving to Oregon. There was a law at some point where married couples got a free piece of land in Oregon. Problem is, Luke is not married. She offers Nora an arrangement. They're going to get a piece of land, and Luke is going to care after Nora and her child. And Nora is going to marry her. The romance in this one is addicting. I spent a sleepless night glued to this novel. The way Luke treated Nora with tenderness and affection, the unresolved sexual tension between them. The only thing that I'm going to warn you about is, as far as I remember, it's been a long time since I read this one. There's some really bad stereotypical representation of indigenous people in this one. I don't remember how bad it is, but the romance is so worth it. It's so good. It's still one of my favorites. This video would be incomplete without Cat Sebastian, obviously. My queen. I love her so much. She knows how to write queer historicals for queer people because she is queer, I guess. We're going to start with the Turner series. It's a trilogy. The characters are all Turner or are connected to the family. The first book, The Social Scoundrel, is my absolute favorite from Cat Sebastian. I highly recommend to start with this one. It's about Oliver and Jack. Oliver comes back to high society from the war and can't quite find his place there. He is injured and he now experiences chronic pain. He limps, he has to use a cane. He finds something suspicious in his sister's correspondency or bells, and the roads lead to a man named Jack Turner. Jack Turner actually has nothing to do with gentry. He hates them. He's the man to hire when you have a situation that requires the help of a man that has some gray morals. So he mostly works for people that can't really do anything on their own because the official law is against them. Oliver finds Jack and confronts him. He wants to know what business Jack and his sister had, but Jack keeps the secrets of his clients and he refuses to tell. Oliver, though, is a very stubborn man and he continues to badger Jack. And because Oliver continues to follow him around, he develops an interest, which is very mutual. I love this book. I love this book so much. I think mostly because of Jack. I just think Jack is such an iconic character. I love him so much. Highly recommend this one. This book is like a really good one to start with when it comes to Cat Sebastian. The second book follows Jack's brother, Georgie. Georgie is a thief. He's a bit of a criminal, but he doesn't want to swindle an elderly lady, so he gets in a fight with the leader of his gang. Oliver, from the first book, offers Georgie an opportunity. He knows this guy who needs someone to do a job for him. The job entails becoming a secretary for Earl of Radnor, who is believed to be mad. His brother and father were very violent, very abusive, and the Earl believes that it runs in their blood. He suffers from anxiety, he's a loner, he doesn't like talking to other people because of his reputation. Georgie agrees to the job. What he has to do there is to pretend to be a secretary and figure out if the rumors about the Earl are true or not. Turns out the rumors are not true at all. The story is very much Beauty and the Beast-like. They don't really gel well at first at all. Georgia spends a lot of time refurbishing the estate and helping the Earl to be a bit more sociable and to open up to other people. As I said, very Beauty and the Beast-like. The third book, The Ruin of the Rake, follows Lord Courtenay and Julian. Julian, for the longest time, was trying to uphold his social image. He always followed the rules, so Lord Courtenay is annoying to him simply for existing. Lord Courtenay is a known libertine. He drinks, he parties, he loves men and women. He is just a guy that does anything he wants. Julian writes a novel and stars Lord Courtenay in it as a villain. He shames him in this novel. He showcases all the worst parts of him. He makes it bigger than it actually is. It's very salacious and it becomes very, very popular among the gentry. Everyone knows that it's about Lord Courtenay too. Julian, though, remains anonymous and he doesn't want to reveal that he is the author of the book. Julian and Lord Courtenay have a common friend. She asks Julian to help Lord Courtenay with his reputation. He doesn't really want to refuse because his friend is asking him to do this, and he feels very uneasy about working with Courtenay on his reputation. It's kind of a forced proximity novel because Julian really doesn't want to be in this situation, but he has to work with Courtenay. And I really like this one. Julian also is disabled. He has a chronic illness that affects his lungs. There's also a novella that is a part of the Turner series that I highly recommend. It's an FF novella. The story is about an ex-thief, now servant named Molly, who wants to leave the past behind and become a proper person, and a girl named Alice who's been kicked out of her house by her family and accused of being a wanted woman, although the attention of the gentleman that put her in trouble was unwanted. She finds a new home as a companion to a noble lady, and she meets Molly, who serves this noble lady. Molly is really into Alice, and although she's been telling herself to focus on self-growth, she cannot stop thinking about Alice, and eventually she even offers Alice to help her to get her revenge. It's a bite-sized novella, but it's perfect. It's swoony, the tension is really good, the plot is pretty good. I really enjoyed this one. I love most of the things that Sebastian puts out there, so that's not surprising. She has another complete series that I've read and loved by her. It's the Sedgwick Brothers series. I think it's Seducing the Sedgwicks, actually. Each book in the series is about a Sedgwick brother. The first one is about the eldest. His name is Ben and he is a clergy, a priest, I guess. He loves the village where he lives, loves his community and is very involved in it. He wants to marry his best friend, although he doesn't really love her. He also takes care of these 3 wild children whose mother died recently. The second character is Philip. He's a sea captain and his wife recently died, leaving him with 3 kids. He never spent much time with his family because of his job, and he preferred the sea to his regular life. The relationship that he had with his wife was not especially intimate, but he has to come back and care for his children because there's no one else. When he comes back, he realizes there is actually someone else, and the someone else is Ben. Philip is not very experienced with childcare and he's very strict because of where he spent his whole life at sea. So he and Ben have very, very different opinions about how Philip's children need to behave. They butt heads, but there is some chemistry between them, and eventually, of course, they end up in the same bed. It's a really good starter of a series. Once again, not my favorite in the series overall, but I think to understand the series and to understand the found family feel of Sebastian's series says you need to start with the first books. A very important thing that this first book sets up is the Sedgwick brothers didn't have the most attentive father. The second book, The Gentleman Never Keeps Score, is one of my favorites overall from Sebastian and in the series. It's about the middle brother Hartley Sedgwick. He got into a relationship with an older man who was also his godfather in exchange for a place in the Navy for the younger Sedgwick brother. The relationship was abusive, but Hartley felt a sense of obligation. He wanted his younger brother Will to find his place in the world and to need for nothing. The godfather died and left Hartley an obscene amount of money and some property, which immediately made the society suspicious and made them zero in on this relationship. They started spreading nasty rumors about Hartley, who lost all his friends and all his connections in a blink of an eye. Even servants don't want to work in his house. He spends most of his time sulking in the house and drinking, and one day a man named Sam Fox appears on his doorstep. Sam is an ex-boxer. He owns an establishment for other black people, and his best friend tells him that she can't marry his brother because when she was younger she needed money and she posed for a nude picture, which now has to be in some rich dude's collection. The rich dude is the godfather that died. Sam comes to Hartley and asks him if he knows anything about the picture and if he can sell it. Hartley hates his ex-lover, so he's willing to help Sam and doesn't even want any money. The problem is he didn't receive the picture collection and he really doesn't know where it is. So they go on this wild goose chase looking for the collection of those drawings. And while they are at it, they develop feelings for each other. The third book is also one of my favorites from Cat Sebastian and in the series, obviously. It's Two Rogues Make a Right, and it's about Will Cedric and his childhood friend Martin. Martin is the son of the evil godfather from the second book. He was shocked by his father passing. Martin hides from everyone and Will is the one that finds him. He kidnaps him, kinda, because Martin stopped looking after himself. He has a lung disorder as well. So Will decides that the country weather is going to be good for Martin and he brings him to a very remote village. They were the best of friends when they were children. Since Martin was very sickly, he didn't have many people that wanted to spend time with him. Will was his everything, Martin was Will's everything, until Will was sent to the Navy. In the Navy, Will continued to write to Martin, but it wasn't the same thing. Also in the Navy, Will was abused by his captain, physically, verbally, emotionally abused. After some time, he dropped out of it, but he was still traumatized by it, so he started using opium and got addicted to it, so he's an ex-drug user. This one is a hard comfort, childhood friends to lovers romance, and it's so goddamn sweet. It's an incredible book. I love these two characters. I wanted them to be together so much. It's a soul-healing book. Everyone needs to read it. The last one from Cat Sebastian that I'm going to recommend is The Queer Principles of Kit Webb. It's her newest one, and it's about a guy who wants to get revenge on his father because it turned out that he is not an actual heir to his title and to his money. It turns out his father is actually still married to another woman, and his marriage to the hero's mother is not legitimate. He's not experienced in thievery at all, so he finds a man named Kit Webb, who's an ex-road thief. I don't remember how they're called, but they're basically people that rob carriages. Kit left his past behind and now he's an owner of a cafe. So when the protagonist tells him about the job, he refuses, but agrees to train him so he could do it himself. This one has a lot of discussions of class, as most Cat Sebastian books do. It also has a lot of fighting, training montage with some amazing sexual chemistry and tension. I love the sense of humor in this book. It's funner than most of her books. This one is not as dark, it's a bit of a romp, and I really liked it. It would be also an incomplete list if I won't mention Olivia Waite's series, her FF series. I've read only the first two books, but I do anticipate the third one. I'm saving it. The first book is The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics, and it follows a girl whose father just died and whom she assisted with calculations. He was an astronomer. She wants to continue his work, and she knows that the society of man the Science Society is not going to accept her because she's a woman. She tries to get the patronage of Lady Moth, who was very influential. Her husband that also died was a part of the Science Society at some point. So they started writing letters to each other and they agreed to meet. Lady Moth presents her to the society, they laugh at her, they don't believe that she was the one to make those calculations for her father, and they refuse to give her an opportunity to translate this French astronomer's work. She feels like she is the girl for the job, and Lady Moth really believes in her, so they decide that they're going to translate the work on their own and sell it on their own against this man's wishes. And while they do this, they get to know each other a little bit and they fall for each other. It's a historical romance, but I'd say that it's for lovers of historical fiction because it pays a lot of attention to historical events and to women's place in history and a bit less to the romance. I think it's a pattern in the series because the second book is a bit like that too. The second book, The Care and Feeding of Waspish Widows, is about a widow and a beekeeper. The widow is a printer and she has a pretty successful printing business. The beekeeper is a beekeeper. She has a husband who's gay and she's pretty lonely because he is at sea all the time. Agnes, the printer, notices that there are bees in one of her printing establishments and she needs someone to take the bees out. And so she hires the other woman to help her and they slowly become friends. They're very resistant of it at first, but they start writing to each other and eventually these letters become very intimate. It is a romance between two middle-aged women, which was very refreshing and nice to see. They had no social obligations anymore, so there was less pressure of society on them to perform certain things. I really like the romance and I do recommend this book, but once again, if you like historical fiction. A recent favorite, The Purse of Loving a Wallflower by Ridley. The story is about Tommy and Philippa. Philippa comes from a pretty rich family that doesn't have a title. Her parents really want to marry her off to a titled gentleman. She doesn't want to get married at all. She is a wallflower, she is a blue stocking. She's mostly interested in having tea with ladies and talking about smart books. Tommy comes from a family of Winchesters. Winchesters are all orphans that a baron took in to take care of. They all have interesting talents. Tommy has a talent for impersonating people. She can pretend to be anyone at all. So when Baron Wonderbean, the baron that took them in, dies, she pretends to be the next heir to the title, and she is into Philippa. It's the second book in the series. I'm not going to explain how they met because it's going to be complicated. You can read the second book without reading the first one. But she's too cowardly to actually approach Philippa. So she pretends to be different people while she's with her. At some point, her persona, her titled gentleman persona, meets Philippa. And Philippa, for the first time, feels something for a man. Very quickly into it, Tommy reveals who she is, and they come up with a very clever plan. Tommy is going to continue to pretend that she wants to court Philippa to appease Philippa's parents. So Philippa would be able to do whatever she pleases because she actually is trying to marry a titled gentleman. This one was so light and so fun and so peppy. I really enjoyed the characters. Tommy is amazing. I love her. I also love her family. It's a lovely novel. I had such a fun time reading it. The fake courtship was such an interesting trope to read about in a queer historical romance. I loved it. I gave this book 5 stars. I highly recommend to read it. The last book is also an all-time favorite of mine. It's The Sublime and Spirited Voyage of Original Sin by Colette Moody. It's a pirate FF romance and it's hilarious. I love it so much. It's set in the 1700s in the Gulf of Mexico. The pirate crew goes ashore to kidnap a doctor for their captain that was wounded, and instead of the doctor, they kidnap his fiancée, Celia, who's a seamstress. They need someone that knows how to stitch things up. So a seamstress will do. They take her hostage. She has a very fiery personality, so it's not really easy for them. She raises hell on the ship. It's very funny. I love this book. And she also falls eventually for the daughter of the pirate captain. They had such good chemistry. The development of their relationship was fun to read about because they didn't like each other at first, and they had all these conversations, had all these adventures. This book is so funny too, and it's a pirate book. I love it. I love it. Everyone needs to read it. These are all the books that I wanted to talk about. This video is going to be so long, I already dread editing it. If you want a part 2, tell me in the comments down below, because I do read a lot of queer historical romances. I hope you found this video helpful, and I guess I'll see you soon with another one, but until then, bye.